Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. If you are watching this back or if you can't see the screen, I'm Aurora Dreger, project lead for ELA, the Educating All Learners Alliance, a project of Innovate EDU, and you are here today for the Everyday Work of Belonging, Schools Designed for Learner Variability, hosted by ELA with Education Reimagined. Take a moment. I'm going to let folks kind of get settled in, kind of land from the waiting room. And go ahead and drop your name, your location, and the organization that you work for. And let us know. Oh yeah, great. We've got great prompt in the chat too. So I'll take another 30 seconds to make sure we're all set up here to dive into our content for today. Um, Great. Let's see who we've got here in the room. Awesome. All right. Thanks, folks. Great to see folks trickling in. Great to see some familiar faces, some familiar names, and some new folks as well. And again, if you're just joining us, you're here for the Everyday Work of Belonging, an ELA webinar with Education Reimagined. And we are so excited to get kicked off today. Um, I'm Aurora Dreger, the project director of ELA. And in just a few moments, we will be getting started. Okay, great. Awesome. I've got Emily, Yahira. Great to see you. Okay. All right. So I'm going to actually kick this over to Kara because I am not able to see my speaking notes at the moment. So Kara, if you are able to help me out at the moment, just so we can get this webinar rocket and rolling, help me out with some introductions because I know we've got some great speakers joining us for today, and I want to make sure that I get us set up and introduced and kick us off strong. So I'm Aurora Dreger. As I said, the ELA project lead, and I work for an organization called Innovate EDU. Many of you are familiar with our work. I'll be leading part of the webinar today, and I'm really thrilled to be joined by Tim, Matt, and Kara. And Kara, I'll pass it to you for a quick introduction of yourself and our guests.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Kara Schoenfeld. I'll introduce myself and then I'll have Matt and Tim introduce themselves if that works for you. I am a partner of research at Education Reimagined. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with Aurora and all of you. At Education Reimagined, I'll talk more about what our organization does, but I'm here today to share about our recent research, which focused on learner centered environments or schools and how they support youth with learning differences. And I'm delighted for you all to be here. I'll pass it over to Tim.
Afternoon. My name is Tim Quayle. I'm the Assistant Director of Avalon School, a 612 charter in St. Paul, Minnesota. Happy to be here. Matt.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Matt Bornheimer. I am the engagement strategist at Norris School District. So, a district leader, really focusing on social emotional learning, engagement, mental health, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you folks so much. Before we dive into our content for today, some quick kind of level setting, if you will. What is ELA, the Educating All Learners Alliance, or ELA for short? Because that's what we need is another acronym in the world of special education. Kidding. But ELA is composed of, and I see some of our partners in here today. It's great to see you. We've got Keisha, I see Lindsay, and I see a couple of folks over here. So ELA is what we call an uncommon coalition of over 180 organizations. So those are all nonprofits, schools, universities, districts, folks from all different corners of the world of the education sector coming together, committing to resource sharing, community building, um, anything to really support the efforts of education reform, and improving outcomes for students with disabilities and students who learn differently. And the our definition of students who learn differently is a pretty wide and inclusive one that includes students with diagnosed or undiagnosed, multilingual learners, students experiencing homelessness, anyone who has had traditionally a barrier to their learning is who the Alliance is aiming to represent, give a voice, and give a platform to. So through events just like today, we try to amplify the great work that's happening out there and uplift those voices and support um, disability advocacy, special education, civil rights, K through 12, all that great stuff. So today's purpose, before we dive on in, we're talking about the work of belonging. So we're really trying to focus on moving beyond the theory and beyond the theory. So we're talking about the everyday practices. So what does it look like to actually put learners first, put learners at the center of your of their learning environment? We're going to talk a lot about learner-centered education, and Kara is going to be able to walk us through a little bit more of what that means and some of the research that's gone into it, so we can all kind of understand, as I said, beyond the theory and to talk about the practice of what makes learner-centered education work for students with learning differences. Great. And we're going to dive into research. So our agenda for today, opening, research study and findings. We're going to do practitioner Q&A. I have some questions prepared for Tim and Matt, and there'll be time at the end for the audience to ask questions. And please, folks, feel free to type your questions in the chat or use the Q&A function. If we don't have time to get to everyone's questions, we will do our best to reach out via email if there's a question that you want answered. Today's session is being recorded. It will be shared with all registrants and will be available on the ELA YouTube channel after today's presentation. Great. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kara to lead us through a little bit about the work that you're doing over there at Education Reimagined. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We are delighted to be here, like I said, and also just in general, delighted with the work that ELA is doing. We're part of this network and we're grateful for that. So a little bit about our organization. We're a national nonprofit. Education Reimagined's mission is to make learner-centered education available to every child in the United States, inclusive of race, background, and circumstance. So given our mission, it makes sense that we would do exploration and research on learning differences. And you might have heard the term learner education, and there's lots of different ways to understand that, but I'm going to share what we mean in Education Reimagined when we use the term. So we have the key elements. Okay, we have 5 key elements of learner-centered education. The keystone of it all is learner agency, is making sure that we truly center around each individual learner, and we ensure that they have agency in terms of what they want to learn, how they want to learn it, and be able to develop their self-advocacy skills. It's also socially embedded, which means learning happens in many contexts with many people. So we sort of break through that idea of the conventional classroom model. We have a lot of our learners learning from different mentors, different staff, different people that they connect with, and from those in the community. We also want to ensure that in a child's education, that the learning is personalized, relevant, and contextualized, meaning that it is not a fixed set curriculum so much as one that's alive and living and has the agility to morph with the needs of a child. Open-walled is perhaps one of my favorite. It means that we're not contained within a school, a campus, or a classroom. It's really this idea that we are an ecosystem and that learning happens everywhere throughout there. So in all the sites that we studied, there was this high component of they're accessing, the community's coming in and the learners are going out. And finally, it's competency-based. And so that means that it's not about seat time. Learners are progressing and learning based on their ability to demonstrate mastery and understanding. So we have, I think one of my coworkers is going to be putting in some links. She might be putting in a link right now for this if you want to learn more about our key elements. So let's dive into the research. So our research question is very simple. It's how do learner-centered environments work with youth with learning differences? We say environments because a lot of the sites we work with, they aren't necessarily schools. They could be out of school time or other types of youth-facing organizations. In this case, we did study 3 schools, and we really wanted to know how are they working with youth that have diagnosed or undiagnosed learning differences. So how we embarked on this research process, it was collaborative. So rather than me coming in as the researcher studying, we assembled a team. So we decided to do what we call a multi-site case study. So instead of diving deep with just one site, we decided to dive deep with 3, so we could see what our findings across all 3. So we selected 3 sites, which I'll tell you about more next. Then we assembled this incredible team. Tim was on that team, so he hosted us, and he also served as a co-researcher. So what was amazing was you had researchers, you had other school leaders, administrators, organization leaders, and educators, and we all came together. We visited each of the 3 sites. We spent 2 days at each of those sites, and we went deep, wouldn't you say, Tim? We really explored. We had interviews, focus groups, we had documents, so we really did triangulate our data. And then what we did is we did a thematic data analysis, and then we produced, instead of just one report, we came up with a series because we had so many rich and deep findings. So the next slide I'm going to show you talks more about the 3 sites. What I love is that all the schools were public, and they all had different contexts. So the first was Lafayette Big Picture. It was in New York. It's part of the Big Picture Learning Network, which has many schools nationally and internationally. I actually taught at one of them before I joined Education Reimagined. They were serving a rural and suburban population, a high school, and they were school within a school. So Lafayette was a school within the larger local high school. You can see the number of learners. We had 29% with IEPs and 18% with 504s. The next was Avalon. That's where Tim is calling us in from. It's a public charter, and it serves middle and high school. It's located in Minnesota. 50% of the youth have IEPs and 10% have 504s. And then Matt, if you see him, he's at the top for me. He's calling in from Norris School District. We visited Norris Academy within that school district. It's a public K through 12 public school district. It serves K through 12, but I think it's primarily middle and high school age that you see in there. You can see that they have 76% with IEPs and 1% with 504s. Matt or Tim, did you want to add anything else at this point?
I would just say, so testament to the fact that our population is always changing, which requires us to always be changing. That our population has shifted quite a lot just recently. We've got quite a few elementary age learners right now.
Oh, great. Thank you for adding that, Matt. I appreciate it. Okay, great. Thank you. And this was our team. So you could see we took our work really seriously, and we had a lot of fun also. But this was the group that we assembled. This is the group that went to all 3 of the sites. So we have some from Education Reimagined. We had all the sites that we hosted. All of them served as co-researchers as well. And we just really enjoyed it and learned so much from each other. So we wanted to give you a glimpse of what we saw. So Matt is a star on this video. You'll see him on here. But this is a little glimpse into how Norris School District in particular is serving youth with learning differences. And we're going to go ahead and play that for you now.
Every behavior is a message. It's communication from someone who doesn't know how to communicate using words.
There are times when they don't know how to say how they are feeling or even what they want. So you just got to keep giving them options, taking their time, never rushing them.
we'd have a day of blowing up, and then the next day we'd spend recentering. And now we're able to have those turnarounds happen in a much briefer amount of time.
The learners here just don't have the skills it takes to say, I'm angry, and so that comes out in a way that can be really counterproductive, but ultimately can turn into something really great.
Learners come first.
Every staff member just wraps around whatever a learner needs at that given time. If a learner is walking down the hallway and they are having an emotional eruption, somebody is there to support them. Sometimes it's not the right person, or that person does everything that they know that's in their tool chest and it just doesn't work, so we tap each other out.
I was talking to Kaya, but it was not working.
You weren't able to express that because people just kept getting you to that point where you were in your emotional brain.
We learn and grow just as our learners learn and grow every day.
Norris is a caring, loving, and sometimes chaotic school, but you can learn a lot of stuff from it, and it has tons of fun stuff because you can do shop. 9-6.
So you were going 24.
You can go outside.
So Malachi wants to dig stumps. So we've got some pieces of tree that I had cut up a couple of weeks back, and I think they're going to bury the stumps in the ground and kind of make some steps with them.
I think some of the best moments happen in that unscripted, outside your comfort zone time. Like, we didn't rehearse this, you know? This was just another Thursday.
He loves coming to school here. We're excited to have him show up every day. You know, he really is an incredible young man. We maintained a really strong relationship with the family to help them understand what was going on each day.
When Malachi's problems were at their peak, Norris School never flinched. They just continued to welcome him as a student, as a learner.
We allowed him to be himself.
They would do research. If they weren't familiar with the topic, they would invest the time to become somewhat of an expert and assemble resources to deliver to Malachi.
Climbing on the, doing like the rope thing where you gotta put one foot in front of the other and then grab the rope and walk across, and being scared.
It's just instrumental in helping building trusting relationships as we see our learners climbing up and trying to do the leap of faith.
When I was scared, he just put his hand down and said, just grab my hand, and I did that.
When you look up and you can see these young learners who 5 minutes ago were melting down in a hallway, yelling and using very colorful language, and now their peers are all encouraging them.
My stomach hurts!
You got this, Malachi. You're doing awesome. Yup.
Standing.
Nice job.
Can I just jump off right away?
Yep, you can. You go. Yeah, you got it. All right, Malachi.
Ready?
Yes, buddy. Yeah! Let's go, Malachi. Yeah! Watch your fall.
For kids to have that experience, first at Norris, in our extended community, really helps them get out into the real community, right? I can do things that I never thought was possible, and people that I trust are here to help and support me through that. They're experiencing, they're navigating life, and everyone's experiences are different, so we guide them on building out their own journey.
It's a chance that they didn't have to get through something that I think they probably weren't going to, or it was going to be much more challenging.
Thank you for having that little journey with us. I'm going to ask that if you'd like to add a word into the chat that describes maybe your reaction or what you're left with as a result of this film, you're welcome to do that now. And if you have any questions, that you'd like to ask, particularly Matt from his school community, there will be a Q&A at the end, so you might want to start thinking if there's any questions. And Matt, is there anything you would like to add to the video before we proceed?
Just want to, if you heard someone shouting real loud when he made that jump, that was definitely me. I rode that high for a while. That was a big moment for him. He'd been working up to it for a while.
Thank you for that. And is that whole ropes course is on your campus?
Yep, it's on our campus. We have I lead the team that runs that course, and we have a number of staff who are trained. It's a pretty extensive training that we do to be able to provide that to learners.
And you have a large amount of land, right, that your campus is on?
Yeah, so the land is owned by Norris Inc. So the agency across the street that has a residential facility along with some other services. So we lease the building and they allow us to use that land as well. So that's kind of some community partnership there. But it's extensive. We've got a pond and a bunch of nature.
So thank you so much. I said that everyone else could have questions later, but then I had to ask a few right now, but thank you. And we do have this video available on YouTube, so if you'd like to share it, you'd be able to watch that and others that we have. So I'm going to get into a little bit more of the research and our research findings, and then pass it over to Aurora to lead our discussion. So I said, instead of publishing just one piece, we decided to publish a series because there was just so much great information that we gathered throughout the study. If you're interested, have a research background like me, you want to know more about the methodology, that's available in a brief. We also conducted a literature review on 9 specific learning differences. So we have like dyslexia, ADHD. We also have anxiety, autism added there. So we had a pretty inclusive definition of learning differences, but we saw what research findings are in established studies and mapped that onto what the sites are doing. And we found that there was a very strong evidence base for a lot of the practices that they've been able to implement. Number 3 is overall, what was the approach we saw? That one is the one we're going to dive into a bit more in this discussion. Then the impact, how that affects learners and others. If you're coming from a policy or conditions perspective, we have a brief on that. And then we also, just hot off the presses today, if you do not have a ton of time or if you just want an entry point, we have synthesized the whole series into a almost like an executive summary, and it looks like Emily just put that in there. So if you just want to take a quick look at what the whole series shows, then you can find that there. So the approach. So we really dove in with this particular one on how learner-centered schools support youth with learning differences. And we found that across the sites in their very different contexts, that we could group all of our findings into 3 main categories. My graphic is here. So these are the 3. The first one was reframe. So we found that before anything else, the sites are rethinking their mindsets around human variability and learner variability. So there is a fundamental shift on a mental mindset level that everything else rests upon. The next piece that we found, and it is a circle because it's self-perpetuating, but the next piece we found was from those mindsets, the schools redesigned how they structured themselves so that they are able to shift, and instead of being sort of the rigid, here's our system that the learners need to fit, they were built upon the mindset that everybody learns differently, so that the structures are there in place to make that happen. And then we saw these wonderful daily practices happening where it all came together, and then that again fed into the mindsets. So it was really beautiful to see all of these happening. I'll just really quickly touch on findings within each before we go into the discussion. So for the reframing of these mindsets, we found that learners were regarded in terms of being human, not necessarily a diagnosis or a deficit. It was, who are you? What do you care about? What are you interested in? Also, let's focus on strengths. What are you good at? Let's lean into those things. And then finally, there was a collaborative mindset where, and you see this one running through, but it was this idea that families were really pulled in. You saw in the video that the families are partnered with. There's a lot of connection between them, between mentors in the community. It's not just isolated educators. It's sort of, it takes a village mentality. With the redesign, this is a picture from Tim's school. This was a mural that one of his students painted. With the Avalon School in particular, you could really see that the school is structured around sustained relationships. So they have advisories, which they stay with the same advisor and peers throughout the course of their time. So in high school, it'd be 3 or 4 years, and it becomes like a family unit. And they build every year. They build trust and understanding of each other. There's also distributed responsibility structures. So you see, it's not just the advisor; it's the whole team. We heard from one of the educators at a site that all learners are my learners. So there's that feeling that you saw across the sites. And there was embedded support. I think, Tim, you might have said this at one point, that there are case managers that are licensed special ed educators, and that all of the learners just sort of assume everyone has one, because you can't tell like who is getting special service, because everyone gets special services. It's everyone is unique and gets what they need. And then here is the experiential learning pathways. So if this is, you can see this in this picture with project-based learning. So it's the idea of that learner agency. The learner thinks of an idea, they propose that idea, they complete a deliverable, they finalize it, and then they have some way that some sort of final product to make that accessible to others. And the last piece is this realize, where it comes together in daily practices. You saw this in the movie with Norris especially. It's behavior as communication. It's not, there's a behavior, let's correct the behavior. There's a behavior, what is it saying? What do we need to understand about that learner? There's a lot of chances for exposure to possibility. I think they have curiosity labs at Norris where the learners can explore, the educators get to share what they love and they're passionate about, and the learners get to explore those. And they also get to, because it's all embedded, if there's a particular staff member that they gravitate towards, they have an opportunity to work with that person. So there's lots of openings. And then you just see a lot of prompting and support in having the learners understand themselves and be able to give voice to what they need. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aurora to lead us through a discussion. I'm really excited to hear Tim and Matt bring these findings even more to life with the stories they have to share.
Great. Thanks so much, Kara. And Tim, Matt, it's great to have you here, and looking forward to hearing more about your experiences. And I believe that I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I enjoy watching these back and being able to see people's faces full screen. So my first question is, and Tim or Matt can answer in either order. But first, let's talk about the mindsets, right? The research shows that the design of your schools is really influenced by mindsets that are reframing learner variability. So tell us about one collective belief that your community holds, and how would somebody actually see or hear that, in action if they walked into your school on any given day?
Sure, I can start us off. A little context. So, Avalon, I kind of shared a little bit, but Avalon is a project-based school, middle and high school. So students spend a huge amount of their day designing and executing independent projects, kind of with the support of licensed staff, with the support of their advisor. But every student has their own path to graduation. So I think one thing you have to understand very quickly, or a mindset that it kind of shifts, is that every student that comes into your building is very different. They have different goals, different needs. At Avalon, it was mentioned, we serve over 50% of our students receive services through an IEP, and all of our students are coming with unique needs and kind of desires. And so you have to very, very quickly meet the kid where they're at. Every single kid has a different goal. And I know that that seems simple, that's like the big paradigm shift that all kids are different. And I know teachers everywhere get that, but I think that mindset really has to drive everything that you're doing as a teacher in a school. And I think that's what kind of the learner-centered lens is trying to do, just kind of provide a framework into, let's think about that individual student first. What are they experiencing? Is the work that you're doing relevant to them or their lives? Do they feel like they can belong? Are they safe in your building? Do we value who they are and what their goals are? And so I think that's the biggest thing, is that every student is different, and how can we approach that to kind of serve that kid the best?
Um, yeah, that's awesome, Tim. I love that. So I mean, I think as I'm thinking about that question, and there's a lot of things I could talk about. One that comes to mind is just the awareness, like the firm belief that everyone, like, learning is fun. Everyone loves learning. We're all lifelong learners. We engage in learning as something that we take joy in and share that joy, and we encourage learners to find a way that that works for them. A lot of the kiddos who come to us have had a lot of negative experiences with the institution of learning, and they've kind of had that fun taken away from them in a sense. Um, so they're coming in and saying, like, I don't like this subject, I don't like that subject, I hate this stuff. And we're like, well, maybe. I doubt really, but maybe. But how about we try learning in this new way you've never even thought about before? We're going to be learning by going and doing a great activity, and then we'll explain to you that, oh, whoops, you learned afterwards. And I think you just see people, you see in this building people on their toes all the time, ready to switch it up as need be in order to make sure that learners are feeling heard, seen, and engaged in something that feels meaningful to them. Um, and we find unique ways to learn all the time, but we're always trying to make it fun. Sorry, I'm going to mute myself. That's the end of what I had to say anyway.
Great. It's always great to see folks like the work never stops, right? Am I
Yeah.
right, Matt? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your responses. So let's think about redesign as kind of the frame for this next question. Research has found that your schools have really restructured responsibilities for learners so that it's distributed in a way that no single educator carries the weight of any one student's success. Karen mentioned this a little bit, is that, you can't tell, quote unquote, who is receiving what services or who is in what program, because the educators really wrap around. But that's that's a great way to approach and think about it. But how do you actually do it? What are one or two structural features of your environment? How do you organize your time, your roles, or communication? That's unique at your school. How do you actually do that in the tactical, practical sense?
So here we connect frequently. Like we talk off. If you talk to anyone really here, I think and you ask them what their role is, it's going to be a complicated answer. We all wear a lot of hats, and we kind of share those hats and pass them back and forth. And I think the most important key to the successes that we have is that we really push forward the concept of assuming best intentions. We present that to learners and to staff. So we're required to be in each other's lanes quite a bit if we're going to be able to share the load and make quick decisions and switch things up as we need to. I think about how many times we've changed our framework. So we have our overarching kind of our baseline framework for how we function, what our vision is, all that kind of stuff. But the day-to-day has changed almost yearly in terms of how we're presenting learning. And I would say the last 2 years is the first time that we've had only minor changes happen. Um, and it's a result of us all being willing to go, like, okay, cool, we're all seeing the same thing, we're all talking about the same thing. Uh, let's figure it out. And there's never there's never a sense of like administration forcing changes. Like, oh, we went to the seminar and learned a cool new thing. Now you all have to do it. It never feels that way because there's collaboration built into the atoms of everything that we do. So if someone in leadership is noticing something that needs change, other people are noticing it too. There's not unilateral decisions being made. Um, but I think one of the big redesigns that we had to kind of grapple with a little bit early is we had learners who, as we started, we had this very open flow going on. Like there was people, with content knowledge around the building, and kids were kind of expected to, go where it feels right to you. And we learned really quickly that a lot of our kiddos, they just didn't know what to do with that. That was too much choice. Um, they didn't even know where to start a lot of the time, and we would try to coach them, but it was a struggle. And then we had learners saying, I just want to sit down in a classroom and learn the old way. It's like, well, we can, so we took that in, took it really seriously, and had a lot of conversations about like how can we stay true to who we are and meet this need for them. And we tried a few different things. Um, and we found out pretty quickly that it was less about they want to sit down and get lectured and more about they want to feel a little bit more certain in what the structure of their day feels like. Um, so we still have an immense amount of choice, but there's elements of how we're presenting things that give them a bit more structure when they want it. Like if their choice is they want more structure, then we can provide that. If they want to do all of their learning out in the community at minimal structure, that's something we can provide as well. So us, kind of tapping into, yeah, like having something that feels a little bit more traditional is also something a learner can want, and we're still being learner centered by trying to meet that need.
There would be a lot of parallels, and there are lots of parallels at Avalon too. And so I think about the structures that change things for us or that have the most impact. I think of two things. One, sort of like Matt was talking about, our staff, Avalon is run as a teacher-powered school since its founding in 2001. And that's changed a little as we've grown and shaped. That started with 8, I think, teachers back in 2001 making decisions, and they were, there after school all night trying to figure out what on earth they were doing. And we're close to 40 now, but we still make all decisions through consensus as a teaching staff, and that's really an incredible thing. And there's a national network, Teacher Powered Schools, in case you want to learn more, and that can look lots of different ways in lots of different buildings. But I think, just like Matt was saying, that actually allows us to be super responsive to student and family needs. I think the whole theory is that those working directly with the students should be the ones that have direct influence on how the school is run. And so for us, I mean, that is every aspect. Charter school in Minnesota is kind of our own little mom and pop shop. So we're making decisions around the learning program, around our kind of pedagogical approach, calendar, the school day, and our own salaries and budgets. I mean, every aspect of the school, it is teacher decision. And so when we see something that's not working for a student that we are working directly with, we have the power to change it and to do it actually very quickly. I think it can be very inefficient on some of those very kind of small decisions that, okay, somebody can just choose this and we can all go forward and it's fine. But when something big needs to happen, everybody that needs to be in the room is in the room, and we can say, hey, this needs to change. And at 9 o'clock, we can have made that decision and it's done. And then we go announce it to students. So I think that part is obviously hugely important to being student centered, is that we have teachers with tons and tons of agency. I think so. Then on the school side, the part that I think of immediately is we organize ourselves into advisories. And so that is really the core of everything that we do at Avalon. I know that that's a phrase that lots of schools have, but for us, what that means is that every student is assigned an advisor and an advisory, and that relationship actually stays for the duration of your time. So if you're in high school, that could be a 4-year relationship, and those advisories are mixed age 9 through 12. And I think that really, really impacts absolutely everything we do. So that advisor is the main contact for the family. They know that student best. They're a built-in advocate for the student in terms of everything they have to do. And they also know, that student's goals, what their struggles are, what they are working towards. And you have time to build up to success. So you have time for failure, and you have time for some ups and downs, like you see in every kid all over the place. And I think that that kind of very long and meaningful relationship adds to all the parts of our program. So if I think about project-based learning, we have students designing and executed independent projects, but I actually, as their advisor, I know what didn't go well last time. I know what their graduation plan looks like. I know what the family communication needs to look like. And so I can help make those projects. I know what partnerships I could help develop out in the community. Oh, we developed a partnership a few years ago with Canine Inspired Change down the street because we had some students that really loved working with dogs, and they would go and volunteer their time there and do some dog training, but they got some life skills out of it. And that only came because an advisor knew a kid well, and they knew the community, and they could make those connections, and they had the power to do it. They came to staff with like, here's a partnership I'd like to develop, and we could all just vote. And then it just happened very quickly. And I think the other part that leads to then is that since I know the student well, I'm the advisor, and I have power in the building, then that student also has power in the building. And so when we talk about student agency and voice, it's a very real thing for us because if a student can come to me with an issue, they actually know that I have power in the building to solve that issue. And so they can start clubs, they can propose changes, they can complain about policy, and I can go push those changes forward. So it really moves then from staff power into student power really quickly. And I think that's a structure that has been super vital to us remaining responsive to student needs kind of over 25 years, because those needs have changed quite a bit. And at every instance, I think we have rebuilt the schedule every year for the last 7 years, and it's really annoying. But every spring, we're like, well, this isn't working perfectly. So we'll sit down and kind of rehash what that looks like.
Right, but the openness to revisiting it, even if it's inconvenient or annoying, it's still part of that's almost like modeling the learning process and the growing process for your students in a way. Maybe they don't see behind the curtain in terms of like staff meetings, but the idea of just because it's an inconvenience or it's annoying or it can feel inefficient at times, like doing things the right way matters.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Right.
And I think the parallel, they actually see us working and
They
collaborating
do. Great.
and struggling. And then they meet also, they have student congress, and they do the same thing as they kind of, talk about issues around the school and propose solutions. I think the other part that you have to be so conscious of is, after 25 years, we have some staff that have been there the whole time and some staff that have been there 2 years. And so how do you balance like, oh, I got this great idea. It's like, well, we tried that 7 years ago and it didn't work. It's like,
Right.
no, actually, that's a valid idea. Let's revisit and let's see if it does now. And how do we kind of build up the expertise, but also be open to like, well, maybe we made the wrong decision 7 years ago, and kind of showing that openness and transparency for the kids is super important.
Thank you. So we're halfway through the prepared questions that I have for today. I see some questions in the chat and in the Q&A feature coming through. I'm going to make sure we have time to get to them. And please keep your questions coming. If we don't have time to get to them today, we can follow up via email. But my next question is around, behavior. But I love the way that your schools treat behavior as communication rather than disruption. So what does that look like on the ground in a specific moment? A student's escalating, they're shutting down. How do your educators, how does your team make that shift in real time? I think I'll throw it to Matt first. I think we're doing a little, yeah.
So there's a definite balance that's required in that, right? So I think the main most important thing is that we're establishing ourselves as collaborators with the learners in all things. So we're interacting with behaviors that are not serving them by like naming them that way, communicating about them that way. Not like, oh, you're being disruptive, oh, you're being X, Y, or Z thing. Like, hey, this doesn't seem like it's gonna work out the way you want it to. This doesn't seem like it's gonna be effective. This doesn't seem like it's going to get the thing that you might be looking for. And then approaching them with curiosity, with evidence that the follow through is going to be in support of them. So we're really founded in restorative practices, and we minimize things that feel like consequences to the highest degree possible to us. Lots of our kids come to us district placed as an alternative to expulsion already. Like they've had the types of consequences the schools do, and that's not something we're interested in doing. We're interested in helping them figure out, what is the source of the problem, and what are viable things we can try together. A lot of times kids just they don't know why the problem is so big. They don't know what the solution ought to be. And they haven't had a lot of opportunities to be coached on how to get to the thing that they want. Because often, sometimes there's just something that they want, and they believe that like they've got this learned behavior that the route to get there is to be big and loud and whatever. And finally someone will give in. And I think that it's pretty tricky for people to naturally like kind of see past that and see past that like, oh, that bothers me, and get to the quick of, there's a need, it's real, your need is valid. The way you're trying to accomplish getting that need isn't effective, but like I'm not going to invalidate what you want. Like the fact that, oh, you want to get in that room because there's a snack in there that you want. Like that's a big deal to you. Just the fact that it doesn't feel like breaking windows big deal to me doesn't mean that it's not a big deal to you. So let's run it back and really like come to an idea, like come to us understanding together about why this is so important, how we can plan ahead for next time. And I think a lot of times it's not crazy complicated. It's just making sure that there is like we're authentically coming into problems and behaving as collaborators and problem solving with their goals in mind, not our goals. Like, and our goals stay there. Our goals don't go anywhere. But, you know, in that moment, we should have already been doing a lot of work to make sure that our goals are aligning with theirs anyway. Like you're here to learn. We want you to learn. You're here to feel safe and supported. We want that for you too. This is not working towards that. 1 second.
Yeah, the question is, how do we deal with behavior? What is our approach to struggles?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the shift from this is a challenge, this is a disruption to, oh, this is a communication. And I love that
yeah.
Matt is like in real time doing his thing. I love this.
Communicating, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, right.
I mean, I would echo many things. I think one, that the advisor relationship as a long-term, very collaborative with families. I think when you are seeing serial behavior, then we are working constantly with those families. I may have mentioned, but 95% of our families come 3 formal times a year, in addition to the constant sort of casual phone calls and emails. And so these are like serious relationships that we are working towards. And so when there is a behavior and you have to call about, you have to make the tough call, it is not the first time that you're calling. You have been working on these particular behaviors, or working on, towards whatever the student's goals are for years, and you know them well, and you just kind of pick up where you left off. So it's not like, just some random stranger calling. I think that's the biggest thing. We also have trained peer mediators so a lot of the low level stuff can actually be dealt with really well between students. And then, high emphasis on restoring any damage that was done, and bringing students back into the community when there was some damage done. And then it is a balance all the time of what is the individual needs and what is the community needs. There are times when stuff that an individual needs is going to infringe on stuff the community needs, and so being really open about that, and making sure to involve all the people necessary as you do that restoration, I think is really important. But starting there, I mean, we know that it's communication. We know that a student is working towards a goal, and those goals are all very different. And so, what is the right balance, I think, is a hard thing to find, but always working towards it. I think the last part would be the collaborative nature of the staff. It is very normal to see a staff tap in, or a staff like, hey, why don't you take a step back? We both have relationships here. Clearly, you have some frustration, and we can work together to do this. And it's never judgment on the staff end. It is a constant collaboration.
So sorry guys, if I could just pop back onto that question really quick because I had to stop short there. And I was thinking about hiding away somewhere for this, but I decided against it because I'm like I'm gonna have to probably help with something here and there. But anyway, uh, I was just so with the responsive behaviors too, something that came to mind for me, because as hearing Tim speak as well, I do most of the communication with parents and guardians and providers and stuff like that. But it's collaboratively sourced. And I think something that's really important is we're both with learners. When problems come up, we're treating them as opportunities to learn. So like we're treating them as, like, oh yeah, this bad thing happened. None of us like the outcome, but what did we find out? And those aha moments are huge, where it's like, okay, well now I know this about you. Did you learn something about yourself? That's great. We have something to work on. That's great. And I think that communication is really heavily imparted with parents too, because a lot of our parents have had negative interactions with school institutions too. So I've had to work really hard with some parents about like, hey, me calling you does not mean that your kid is bad. Like we shouldn't like that assumption is not serving us either. But there are like some parents where it's like if a phone call home means there's going to be punishments at home, whatever. And it's like, well, no, I'm letting you know a bunch of stuff. It's not necessarily bad. Um, and I think a lot of work goes into delivering, like, here's the thing that happened. It wasn't good. And here's all the stuff that they learned from it. And also, there's a lot of times with kids, it's like, okay, you had a 15-minute crisis, you broke a bunch of stuff, but last week's crisis was 20 minutes. Like, how cool is that this was only 15 minutes? Like, that's awesome. And like, I can't wait until we're down to even fewer minutes when we go into crisis. That's going to be awesome. And like really giving them even just the smallest kernel of something where it's like, okay, this wasn't like I'm not just bad. Like moving forward in a way that feels good. And at the end of the day, like they don't want to have negative interactions. They don't want to have bad days. They don't want to have these tough things come up. Like, and if people are cued into that belief of, okay, you don't want this either. Like you didn't want to throw off my class today. That wasn't your goal. It was an outcome. And really making sure that we're front loading that where it's like, okay, that wasn't good for either of us, but here's some good stuff that did happen and here's how we move forward. Um, yeah.
I
Can I,
mean,
or
yes, please,
can I just
Kara.
say, so one of the things that Tim and Matt brought up were just the parents' perspective. So at all the sites, we did speak to
Yes.
parents. And I myself am a parent of a neurodivergent child. And I have to say that the stories that we heard from the parents in terms of that collaborative mindset and them all working together was they experienced such profound relief. And it wasn't just this restoration of a child's belief in themselves. It was a huge shift in how the parents were able to relate to the schools and even like the growth they saw in their child. It was just, I almost cried every single time we talked to parents because it was just really powerful testimonials that we got.
And as a former teacher myself, folks who've been following along in the ELAverse know that I spent a lot of about 10 years in the New York City public and charter school system. For me, one of the last straws at a school, I'm not going to name names, but a school whose whole philosophy was no nonsense, no excuses. Um, Watching students, adolescent, teenage, Black students, Black boys who are now going into the community with this firm belief that they are a bad kid because they got in trouble for talking in class, for rolling their eyes, because that's what 13-year-olds do. So, um, the fact that you're framing this as like, you're not a bad kid, and to your parent, your kid's not a bad kid. In fact, look at all the awesome things they did gives me just a tiniest bit of envy that I wasn't working at one of your schools when I was in the classroom. Um, I've got one more question for you all. We've got about 7 minutes left for today, and we've got a great question in the chat. So I'm going to try to keep us a little more lightning round here. Because I really do want to talk about self-knowledge and self-advocacy, because we've talked about how it makes, us on the team and as the adults, but let's really talk about the kids and your students. Think about a specific student. What did your school have to do to help them reframe, redesign, and really make real before that student could learn to advocate for themselves, right? It's a big part of your design, it's a big part of the research, but we talked about how we're doing it. How do you teach a kid to do it?
So a few examples pop into my head. Um, I think I'm going to go with one that is the most recent. So we have a learner who we just went into summer session, and his behavior started really, like, they really shifted as summer started. He was just way less engaged, really picking at other kids. Like, it was turning into a pretty substantial bullying concern. Like, he was really on everyone. Um, and I I kind of, got worried early on and spoke to the support network around him. We keep track of who learners have identified as the people that they feel most supported by, and so I tapped into those people as well, and we went forward with the strategy of like, hey, something's wrong. He's distracting himself, or like, there's something underneath this that's causing this shift, and we don't necessarily need to know all the details of it, but he needs to know that that's happening. So a lot of just kind of whittling away at, like, hey, like, do you need to talk? Like, is everything okay? This doesn't reflect what we know about you as a person. Like, when you're being unkind to your peers, that's not, we know that doesn't feel right. Like, something must be off. And, like, being really clear about that, like, making that really known, where it's like, we're worried about you because this doesn't match what we know about you. And he was kind of dug in, not really giving us anything, but we didn't stop giving those little outreach moments of, hey, like, we're gonna redirect firmly the behavior. Like, we're not gonna let kids get bullied and not do anything about it. But we're always coming back and being like, hey, like, I'm concerned. If you want to talk, I'm here, and, like, making sure that it's clear to him that we don't think he's a bully. We think that something is wrong, and that he might need our support. And then eventually it all came out all at once. We were on a walk with a bunch of his friends, and he's at that groupthink age, and he asked to split off from the rest of the kids, which never happens, and talk to me one-on-one, and shared this, like, really intense anxiety that he's having, and these, like, physical symptoms of that anxiety that he's having, and the fact that we were kind of able to talk together about what was going on with that, and he came to the conclusion where it's like, he's trying to avoid triggering panic attacks and putting himself into a hyper alert state to balance out some of that anxiety. So he's, like, starting fights, starting conflict, because that conflict matches where his body is at, and it feels more comfortable to him, and trying to avoid thinking about the things that are making him panic. And so ever since then, he stops in. We learn new grounding strategies. He comes in, like, when he starts getting in that mode, it's still happening here and there, but then he'll come and sit just in silence, and we're slowly working through it, and it's not fixed. Like, that's not how it works, but he's aware. He's got way more understanding of what, like, it's not just like, oh, I'm freaking out and I don't know why. Like, I don't know what's wrong with my brain. He thought he had, like, done brain damage to himself or something. So he just has this way deeper understanding of, like, what's going on and what the path forward could look like. And he went and advocated for medication that he probably needed independently. So that was really cool too.
I mean, it's the patience involved is incredible, but then the awareness and advocacy. So Tim, yeah, can you give us an example of, like, how you or your school helped a specific student kind of find that path to self-advocacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it is more general, but I'll have a specific example. But I think, we do get students that have never had the opportunity to practice any kind of advocacy. Like, they've never been asked what they want to learn or what works best for them, or any of those aspects. So it does take so much training, and we had to work, I think, even a little on our own scaffolding, instead of just like, hey, good luck graduating 4 years, design some projects, see ya. Like, okay, here are some tiny pieces you can choose. And then maybe most of the path is set, but can you set this little part, and you can design this part? Because I think to get students to be able to do that, we have to give them, like, really genuine opportunities to actually do it. And students are really smart, and they know that it's like, well, you say I can set the rules, but you don't mean it, so screw you. They know that as soon as you say something that's not genuine, like, they're gonna call you on it. So you know, well, there are bigger examples, but you have to give lots and lots of tiny, tiny chances to practice. And so, one, I mean, that's designing their own projects. And it could just be, hey, by tomorrow, you're going to have this done, and we're going to call it a success. We're asking students to define their own path to graduation. Sometimes it's just setting daily goals. What are you going to have done today? And what can I communicate home that either you did or not? It's like, what are the chances? And then when they do reach success, like, we got to celebrate it. And so they can get, like, oh, I can succeed here. They're valuing me for who I am. maybe I will try something a little bigger tomorrow. They're forming partnerships or whatever it is out in the community because they've done these little stuff. And we ask them to run their own conferences with their parents or their families. Like, how do you know you are being successful? And what is the evidence of that? And I think like long term, I can picture a student that really was just so unaffected by everything, didn't care, and just kind of like, what do you do on the weekends? Like, I don't know, I walk around the woods. Like, well, how can we make that a project? And he kind of got into botany and like identifying plants. And by his senior year, he had written. So 3 years later, he spent his entire senior year creating a field guide to survival in Minnesota, and like built a Quincy out in his backyard and like lived 20 degrees below zero in a little ice hut, and then produced a manual on how to survive, and like got biology standards and writing standards and all this stuff. But it started so small of like, can you pick out a tree? Like you said, like, you're kind of a sad guy. There are 3 trees here. Can you name them? And we started there, and then over 4 years, it just blossomed. And then he went off to he works for the Forestry Service now. So it's just magical to give a kid some agency and find success and see where it goes.
Folks, we're at time, so I'm going to leave this slide up while we wrap it up. I'm going to ask my panelists great question in the chat about if I knew then what I knew now. If anybody's got if either of you have like a one sentence, if I knew then what I knew now, any advice you want to give to our audience as we wrap it up here today?
I think we talk so much about student agency. I think it is very scary as a teacher, especially if you're running 7 class periods of 30 kids, to give any kind of control back to the students. But like, it's okay. It won't be a disaster.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I think I came into our setting working with similar populations because we have a challenging population, and I came in and was immediately like, this is high risk. We gotta look like, what are we doing here? And every day I'm amazed by what the kids are capable of when you provide them with that trust and with that agency. And I've gotten really good at letting things ride and keeping my silence until until it's time to say something where I'm like, I'm not sure that I would do that, staff member, but go ahead. And then it works. It's like, oh, that's so amazing. So glad I was here to help if it didn't.
Thank you so much to Tim, to Matt. Thank you to Kara. Thank you to Emily for the fantastic chat support. My colleague from Innovate EDU as well, Michelle. Thank you for the tech support. Folks, I encourage you all to stay connected to ELA and stay connected to Education Reimagined. On the previous slide, we had some great QR codes or some links, and all of this material will be shared in a day or two via email to anybody who registered for today's webinar. If you know somebody who make a great partner, make the invite, shoot me an email. If you've got a great resource you want to share, send it my way as well. If you want to stay informed so that you don't miss any other events or resources, sign up for our newsletter at educatingalllearners.org. We're about 3 minutes over, so I want to say thank you to everybody who stayed on. This was a fantastic conversation. I feel like I could keep going forever, so I do need to make sure that we respect the boundaries. But Tim, Matt, Kara, and Emily, thank you so much for joining us on behalf of ELA. And have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.